Okay guys, so this morning we're going to look at how we can type on what's called a path, which means that we can do different shapes, and you can see here there's a circle shape, and you can actually create that shape and type around that shape in Photoshop, which is another way that we can explore font. You can see up here that I've got all these different font explorations based on my saying or proverb, a friend in need is a friend indeed. So I'm just going to find my layers. Here we go here. A couple of things about text boxes I'd like to show you before we get going. I'm going to turn off auto select so I can control the layers. If I click on this layer here and I move to the move tool, should be my first one, which it is. Now if I am on my text tool and say that I can change my font up here, I'm going to select all so my text is selected. I'm going to change it to 24. What you'll see is obviously the font becomes bigger, but also a little trick for you to see the little plus sign? That means that something is cut off and you can't see it. So I can either drag that and make that bigger, but it'll actually drag off the page, or I can select a smaller font size. Now here you can scroll down and choose the font size, or you can type it in. Doesn't have a size 20 font or a size 22 because it goes from 18 to 24, and I think 20 is what I want. So I'm going to click on that and then I'm going to move that back. Now another little trick when looking at this is if you'll see here, the end of the font is actually here, but the text box is this big. You want to drag the text box in so it's about the exact size it needs to be. The reason is that when you transform it, so if I click off the text tool and back to move now, and I want to make it bigger, you can see, I hit Command T to transform, that what we call the bounding box is limited just to the text. So I'll hit enter. Now you can see what happens. I'll show you what happens if you don't have that. So if I make this much bigger, remembering I'm on the text tool, not the move tool, now I want to move it or transform it, I have to click on the move tool, and I'm here now, still selected on the same layer. I hit Command T. Now it's going to include that space in what needs to be bigger, so it's not always going to be something that's really clearly showing you what the size will be. So I'm going to go back in and change that. Alright, so that's about the right size. Now I can click on the move tool. Now in terms of creating what we call a path, this is a fun bit. You need to go to what's called your ellipsis tool, which is down here, and I'm going to click on that, and I'm on the ellipse tool. You can play around with some of these as well, which we will in a minute. Here's the ellipse tool. Now up the top here, this menu should come up, and instead of having a shape, which would be if you wanted to just draw an oval or a circle, you have to click on path. Now if I want a perfect circle, remember I can hold shift down. That will give me a perfect circle. And then that, see here, if you see over in the layers palette, sorry, not layers palette, over in the palette area, that this path windows come up. And remember, if you don't have a palette that you want, you go up to window and you scroll down and you make sure there's a tick there, and then it'll turn up. So once I've got my path, I've gone to ellipse, I've changed it to path. I need to change it to path before I draw the shape. I now can click on my text tool and see it turns into that thing. Now I can do a friend in need is a friend indeed. Whoops, spelling mistake. You can see that it's cut off, and I can see the little plus sign here. Now the same as with any other font, like if it's straight, I can come up here and I can change the size. And you can see that's perfect. I can also then, what's really cool is I can look at making different patterns with it. Now you can also change the shape. You don't have to have a perfect circle. I'm going to click on here, make sure it's on path, and I'm going to drag it down like that. I click the text tool. Now you could also have your text copied, and you can just copy and paste it. So I'm actually going to copy that now. So next time, now this is much bigger, so You can see that's cut a little bit off here, so I'm going to go down to 14, 18, 24, and you can actually just keep going until you find the right size. So what I can do here, I'm just going to leave this here, but you can see that the idea is that you can have multiple shapes. I could be putting new words in here. So if I do another little shape which will create a sense of repetition, I'm going to hold down Shift and I'm going to change it to the text, and this time I'm just going to put Indeed repeatedly, and then I'm going to make it much smaller, okay, and maybe a little bit bigger now. Alright, so now I'm going to take that and I want to put it in the middle here again. I can make it a little bit smaller using Command T, just like anything else, and then I can move it, and that's quite cool because you can see visually it's starting to create a shape and a pattern, and then I'm repeating Indeed to make sure that the message of what I'm saying gets across. So we'll try one more shape. I can go to the ellipse tool. I could try the polygon tool. Let's try that. Now again, the shape will be pretty rigid on this because it's the polygon, it's only one shape, but again I can paste my shape in here and you can see that I can make different shapes. This is a bit more angular, but remember that we are playing with how we can make text into image, so it might be worth you having a play. Now I'm going to make it 20 so that it just fits like that, because I quite like that idea. So you can play around with how text overlaps and looks in what you're doing. This one here, just quickly, is using the same technique we've looked at, where we where we write the word, rasterize it, copy the image from the other layer, then add effects. Okay, so that is a really great text exploration page. The only other thing I would add is that you probably want to know the names of these fonts. So you can add another little text box next to each font and just name them so that you know that you can come back to them. Okay, so that is where we're heading. I'd like you to try these and add them onto your page so you can show that you're exploring text as an image as well.